Imagine living in Los Angeles during the summer of 1985. Every night, people locked their doors, checked their windows twice, and slept with one eye open. Welcome to another episode of Coffee, Secrets, and Transformation. I'm your host, Tom Ray. Families were terrified because a killer was roaming Southern California, choosing their victims at random. He broke into homes while people slept. Young, old, rich, or poor, it didn't really matter. The media gave him a name that would become infamous across America. The name, the Night Stalker. But who was the Night Stalker? It was Richard Ramirez. And how did he earn that nickname? How was he finally caught? And what happened to him after his regime of terror ended? Richard Ramirez was born in February 29, 1960 in El Paso, Texas. His full name was Richard Leyva Munoz Ramirez. As a teenager, he became fascinated with violence and crime. Later, he drifted to California, where he lived in a troubled life involving drugs, burglary, and eventually far worse crimes. Few people around him could have imagined that he would become one of the most feared serial killers in American history, the Night Stalker. How did he get that nickname? Well, the nickname came from the way he operated. Ramirez typically attacked at night, sneaking into homes through unlocked doors, windows, and other entry points while victims were asleep. The attack occurred in the middle of the night when people were most vulnerable because he seemed to appear out of nowhere under the cover of darkness. So the media began calling him the Night Stalker. The name stuck and became one of the most infamous nicknames in criminal history. So in between 1984 and 1985, Ramirez carried out a terrifying crime spree across Southern California and later parts of Northern California. His crimes included murder, sexual assault, burglary, kidnapping, attempted murder, and home invasions. What made investigators' job difficult was that Ramirez couldn't follow a predictable pattern. He used different weapons, targeted different types of victims, and attacked people of various ages and backgrounds. Some victims were elderly, some were young, and some survived, while many did not. His unpredictable created widespread fear through the California. Authorities eventually linked him to at least 13 murders and numerous sexual assaults and multiple burglaries. Most of Ramirez's crimes occur throughout the greater Los Angeles areas. Communities across Southern California lived in fear because nobody knew where he would strike again. Eventually, attacks were also connected to locations in Northern California, including parts of San Francisco and the Bay Area, because his crime stretched across such large region. Many residents felt nowhere was safe. So gun sales increased, security system increased, and became a lot more popular now. And the people began locking windows during the hot summer nights. And remember, this was a time where AC units weren't common. So the only way to get some fresh air, you had to leave the window open. So the fear was so intense that the news coverage dominated television broadcasts across Southern California. Police formed a special task force and worked around the clock to identify the killer. Investigators connected fingerprints, witness statements, and evidence from multiple crime scenes. For months, Ramirez managed to avoid capture, but eventually detectives developed enough evidence to identify him and release his photograph to the public. That decision changed everything. Suddenly, millions of Californians knew what the Night Stalker looked like. And one day, someone recognized him. Hey, that's him. On August 31st, 1985, Ramirez returned to Los Angeles after learning that police had released his photograph to the public. A woman recognized him almost immediately. Richard walked into a liquor store in the city of East Los Angeles, and he walked into and picked up the newspaper. He saw the newspaper front page of his picture and slammed it on the floor. So that's when the woman recognized him. So people began to shout that the Night Stalker was in the neighborhood. So he ran, and he actually tried to attempt to steal a vehicle, but residents chased him through the streets of East Los Angeles. Several people caught him and held him down while others called the police. So by the time officers arrived, an angry crowd had already stopped one of those America's Most Wanted fugitives. It's one of the most rare cases where ordinary citizens play a major role in capturing a serial killer. So the trial became one of the most publicized criminal cases in California history. Evidence connected Richard Ramirez to a long list of violent crimes. In 1989, he was convicted of 13 murders, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, and 14 burglaries. The jury sentenced him to death. But despite receiving a death sentence, Ramirez would never be executed. Ramirez spent about 24 years on California's death row at San Quentin State Prison. Appeals and legal proceedings continued for decades while he remained incarcerated. So during that time, he became one of the most notorious inmates in the United States. Richard Ramirez died on June 7, 2013, at the age of 53. He was still on death row. Now, when he became seriously ill, he was transformed from San Quentin to a hospital in Greenbrier, California. Officials later reported that he died from complications related to a B-cell lymphoma, a form of a blood cancer, along with other significant health problems. He never faced execution. So Richard Ramirez, his terror lasted more than a year, but it left a permanent mark on California's history. His crimes terrified entire communities. It actually changed how people thought about home security and created one of the most infamous manhunts in modern America. In the end, the man known as the Night Stalker was brought down not only by police, but by ordinary citizens who recognized his face and refused to let him escape. More than 40 years later, the name Richard Ramirez remains a chilling reminder of one of the most darkest crime sprees ever to strike California. Thank you for watching an episode of Coffee, Secrets, and Transformation. I'm your host, Don Ray.
Don't rave!